Milwaukee Bucks. It's time to talk to the doctor. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and just like the Hawk Tour girl, I am a CIA plant. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms, so give us a big thumb, a double bang, leave your comments. Yesterday we dropped a 10-team mock draft, and I confused my words at the start of it, which happens sometimes. I said that Yahoo defaults the prize leagues to 10 teams. That is incorrect. I apologize for that. I believe they still, because I can't enter the prize leagues, but I remember looking at it and saw that, but it's not the case. They default standard leagues and public Yahoo leagues are 10-team leagues. Let me rephrase this. Yahoo public leagues are 10-team leagues. Yahoo prize leagues are 12-team leagues by default. So we did a 10-team mock draft yesterday, and if I got that wrong again, please let me know. I did a 10-team mock draft yesterday using Yahoo's settings with these stupid 2 centers and 13-man rosters for a 10-team mock draft. Remember that. And that was why, because Yahoo free leagues are 10-team leagues now, not 12. I cannot get this through my head. We are talking, like I said, about the Milwaukee Bucks into today's show. A couple of housekeeping things. Check your emails for Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, because those invites have gone out. If you haven't received one, I'm not sure what to tell you. I've tried to get through as many of those applications as I can. If there was an error in how you entered an email address, or maybe it went to your junk, I honestly don't know what happened, so I do apologize. So if you think you should have gotten one, put another entry in, that's okay. And by now, like, this time is lapsing. If you got an invite and you're not accepting it, you're getting kicked out. Because I just need to get these leagues set up, work the orders out. I've got the whole red division is sorted. Everyone is paid up in that. The blue division, I'm waiting on one person. And then we've got 7 other divisions, leagues/divisions, which are each color league has 10 individual leagues in it. Individual division, so we've only got one that's fully paid up. The others have got like 6 or 7 or 10 guys waiting out of the 120, but I want to get those sorted. So if you haven't done it, you're going to get booted if you don't do it soon. So we can get these things sorted and drafts starting out next week. Just some other news that is not Milwaukee Bucks related, but it is about Kawhi Leonard. You know that there's 2 things you know about me. Absolutely massive below the belt. That's one thing you know. Second thing you know is that I have been in the past very much adamant of, if you were injured the year before, that does not mean you'll be injured this season. If you were healthy the year before, that does not mean you'll be healthy moving forward. Injury-prone labels get thrown around. We have a memory of one year that I talk about this all the time. I am not scared to draft injured players. I drafted Kawhi in round 2 last season. I would draft Zion. I would draft LaMelo. I have no problem with that. But this season, there are 2 players I am not drafting anywhere close to their ADP. One of them is Joel Embiid. Not because of a weird injury-prone label, because of multiple meniscus surgeries on the same knee, which has a gigantic rate of failure and recurrence. Not touching him. The other is Kawhi Leonard, who has had ACL tears. And guess what he's also had? Multiple meniscus tears in his knee. Now, again, missed the playoffs. Weird thing with USA camp, and now the comments from Lawrence Frank today saying, yeah, there's still some swelling, so we're not going to put him through drills in training camp, and I don't know. I don't want to put a time frame on it, but he might be okay for the start of it. He is cooked. I'm so sorry. I love Kawhi. But you can't have quad tendinopathy leading to your knee, tearing an ACL, tearing a meniscus. There's probably a third tear of a meniscus in there somewhere. And me have faith in that. So that's why Kawhi might be a first-round player by per-game basis. I will not touch him in the top 3 rounds, because they are going to have to. He's either going to miss time because he can't move, or they're going to have to try and preserve it somehow. And this is not a fake injury-prone label that I throw out or anything like that. I'm not saying, well, he played last season. They are very specific scenarios where I'm just not interested in doing it with him. Now, I've already said many times, and you saw me do it in a mock draft, that I took James Harden. Actually, it wasn't a mock draft. It was a real draft. It was a draft only. I took James Harden at pick 12. If you want to do it, do it. I've got absolutely no problem with it. If Kawhi is going to miss, and I think he will, like someone like Norm Powell gets a scoring boost as well, but Harden is going to have to do a lot. Probably need a little bit more Kevin Porter in that mix as well. So, yeah, I've got, if you want to be looking, especially because that's a weird area of a draft, if you want to take Harden at 12, 11, go for it. You can have faith in Kawhi if you want, and you want to take him in round 2. I think it's a bargain at 30. Absolutely go for it. Not gonna complain about it. I'm probably just not doing it now. I said top 3 rounds. I'm probably not. With the obfuscation of the front office, I'm probably not doing it inside the top 50, honestly, with Kawhi now. Too much nonsense. There's too many red flags there, I think, associated with that. All right, so that's that introduction. Let's actually get in now and talk about old mates, the, what do you call them? The Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, that's who we're talking about. The old Milwaukee Bucks. Because this is a team that was chaos last season. They fired Mike Budenholzer. They traded for Dame just before training camp. Not AJ Griffin, his dad. Adrian Griffin. Not a great year for the Griffins, honestly, in so many different ways. What a terrible year. He was fired immediately after some terrible starts. Then Doc Rivers came in and blamed every single person that lives in Wisconsin for whatever failures he was undergoing. And it wasn't good. But now we've got a level of stability. I'm not saying that Doc is going to turn things around. Glenn Rivers has some questionable decision-making. He's at times been a really good regular season coach, but he's very, very frustrating. And his, I want to say lack of effort, which is not the correct term, but we know what he wants to do. He's not interested in rebuilding teams. He's very much interested in sort of sitting there and being almost a figurehead. And that doesn't always work. We will see what happens, though, with this squad. And not as easy to discuss their starting lineup as it was with the Minnesota Timberwolves, but it's pretty straightforward. It's going to be Damian Lillard, it's going to be Khris Middleton and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Brook Lopez. And then almost certainly, it's Gaz Trent, who steps into the vacated starting shooting guard spot. But I will say this. Last season, Malik Beasley was in that position, and at the end of the season, he wasn't. Patrick Beverley was in that position, and they went with Beverley and Lillard to provide some defense. Now, Gary Trent and Damian Lillard have been partners before in the backcourt in Portland, but Gary Trent is also an incredibly overrated defender who's honestly just not very good at it. But there is a player on this team who fits the Patrick Beverley mold absolutely perfectly and is an absolutely elite guard defender, and his name is DeLon Wright. I don't think that Doc Rivers will begin the season with DeLon Wright starting next to Damian Lillard, but I also wouldn't be completely thrown off. Like if you went with an AJ Green or an Andre Jackson there, I'd go, that's a little weird. As much as I think Doc might like AJ Green. But DeLon Wright fits the Pat Beverley mold, and Pat Beverley was the man starting next to Damian Lillard last season. At the end, not Malik Beasley. So there is, I guess, a level of precedence, perhaps, that could happen there. Let's take a look at some guys, and by guys, I mean guy, who might be, I think, undervalued on this team. And that does lead us to James Christian Middleton. It's a nerve-wracking thing to draft Middleton in a fantasy league these days. Wrist issues, knee issues, limited minutes all season, which is what happened to Middleton last year. He played just 27 minutes a night. I'll bring his stats up on the screen for you now. Middleton is, 33 years of age. He's a 6'7" wing. He played 27 minutes with 24 usage. He suffered a big usage drop and scoring drop with Lillard arriving. He averaged 15, 5, and 5 with 0.9 steals. But he shot 49 from the field. He shot 83 from the line. He was awesome in the playoffs when Giannis went down. And then, of course, we get the scenario now where he's coming off preseason, off-season ankle surgery, which is just not what you want to hear with Middleton on both of his ankles. Now, he did have suffer some sprains, and I do believe this is like an arthroscopic cleanup type procedure. So not like a reconstruction, not a significant ligament tear that need to be reattached or anything like that. Just like, I'm guessing, bony sort of fragments sitting around and loose bits of cartilage and all that sort of stuff they do in an arthroscopic cleanup. I don't think that Middleton will be impacted to begin the year, but who knows? His knee could also just be completely rooted, and they have to play him 28 minutes a night instead of the usual 32, 33, although he was playing good minutes in the playoffs. But I love the value that I get. We talked about Kawhi Leonard and where you might have to pick him, but like Middleton's ADP on Yahoo's 101. On ESPN, it's 118. On Fantrax, it's 98. His category rank, which ESPN, when you do go into a draft room, the category ranks are updated. On their website, of course, when you click head-to-head category ranks, they aren't. They're still sitting there from April 22nd, but the rankings are updated, and I still would suggest that you take a large grain of salt with those rankings. DeAndre Ayton's at 147, Kristaps Porzingis is at 28, and Jalen Green's expected to increase his scoring by over 4 points per game. So just bear all that in mind in terms of their rankings that have been updated for categories. That's just the ones that I can remember off the top of my head, but they have been updated. So semi-updated. So I can only semi-give them shit about their rankings, which I'm going to talk about that in a little bit in a second. I know you love hearing about it, but there's something important that I want to mention with that. For Middleton as well, on ESPN Points Leagues, he's ranked at 118 and his ADP sits at 118 as well. These are absolutely free hits. There is nothing risky about making selections at that spot of Middleton, I don't think. He's not going to be a top 40 guy that he was in the past, but top 70, top 80, worst case. Like, yeah. And at that spot, and if he's not ready to go at the start of the year and they're playing him 22 minutes a night, then we move on or we stick him in IL or whatever we do. All right, we go, okay, it's going to be another one of these, and then we're officially cooked on him. But if he's out there playing 32 minutes opening night, we're in very, very good shape to begin the year. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season has started, and you can start that season with a big return from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You might be watching a game, and in the middle of the game, you get a hunch. You go, I can see something trending in a certain direction. So you can open the app, you can have a look at all the bets where you can place them, your in-game, there's props and there's money lines and spreads and all that sort of stuff. But it'll also show you the stats. It'll give you a live play-by-play of the game as well. So wherever you place your bets, all those things are all in the one screen. And if you are a new customer to FanDuel, when you sign up, you place a $5 bet and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You don't even have to win that first bet. So go ahead and check out FanDuel.com right now to get started. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Just quickly on the ESPN, people go, on ESPN rankings and that, people go, why do you even talk about ESPN? They obviously don't care. No one plays there. That is false. Right? That is very false. You might not play there. I don't play on ESPN, but about 35% of fantasy leagues are at ESPN. So I have to discuss them. There was an article that was put out yesterday talking about category leagues and the guys that one of the writers was targeting. It was Eric Carabell who put it out, right? And I clipped a section of it and posted it on Twitter. And it did seem like, and I see this, and I apologize to Eric for this, saying that this section, this article is very typical of ESPN fantasy basketball. This was not me calling out Eric for what he was writing, because what he was writing was correct, and it was two sections on Jalen Johnson and Jalen Duren. He's like, I cannot understand how Jalen Johnson has an ADP of 100. What are we doing? How is this possible? Why are people letting him fall to this area? And then he said something like, yeah, look, just go grab him in round 6 or 7. Now, obviously the people writing on ESPN have to be beholden to the data that is on ESPN in terms of where people are drafting. So they're like, you're drafting on ESPN. Why is this guy going in the hundreds? Like, if he's going in the hundreds, you can get him at pick 60 and you're going to get unbelievable value. And Jalen Johnson's a guy that probably should go inside the top 40. We all sort of know that. But this article highlights the thing of like these initial ranks and these ADPs are absolutely they're completely off. And the fact that one of their writers is like, what are you guys doing? And then the next one was about Jalen Duren, who had an ADP of 97. He's gone, what's going on here? Jalen Duren, he hits his free throws. He's a good rebounder. Yeah, look, if you can grab this guy late, this is an unbelievable pick, which is 100% true. If you are using those ADPs, which, again, is the bulk of the people drafting on ESPN are creating these ADPs that people are drafting, and that is unbelievable value. This is not me calling out the writers. It's not me calling out those individual people. It's calling out the whole company and the lack of focus they put in and the deprioritization of fantasy over there and the lack of care they put around it. Because, yeah, if I'm writing something specifically for ESPN leagues, I'm going to say, bloody get Jalen Johnson to pick 120. That is unbelievable value. I don't understand why he's falling either. That is what my point was with all of that. Good? Sorted. So undervalued, overvalued players. We've done that one. Let's talk about we've done undervalued, sorry. Let's talk about overvalued. There are a couple of those guys on this team, and we'll start by talking about them. They're both big men. It's Brook Lopez, and it's Bob Portis. We'll start with Brook. People at times really do love Brook, and that's fair enough. He's one of the more interesting and funny players in the NBA. Sometimes his fantasy production gets overvalued and outsized because of ranking metrics. I would not be looking at Brook with an ADP on Yahoo of 72 or a rank of 73. That is just not interesting to me. That is round 6 for Brook Lopez, who suffered a significant tail-off last season when Doc Rivers arrived. One thing I will call out, and I don't know who put these ESPN projections out for the category leagues, and that which then translated into rankings, but he's ranked 38th on category leagues, and that, we talk about league winners, that is a league loser. If you take Brook Lopez at 38, what are you doing? There is zero rationale for that. I am so sorry to tell you. His Fantrax ADP is at 77. And then in points leagues, he's just not good enough. He's just not going to do this. His ADP and rank on Yahoo are the same categories in points, so 72, 73 is way too high. His ESPN ADP is 107, which for category leagues I don't mind, but for points leagues it's too high. And he's ranked 94th on ESPN for points leagues. I do not get that. I don't understand those ranking positions for Brook at all, who again suffered a lot last season. He is going to be 37. He also played 31 minutes a night last season. In the past, under Budenholzer, he was playing 28 a night. So he played more minutes. That could easily fall away. 12 points, 2 threes, 5 rebounds, 2.4 blocks, 48 from the field, 82 from the line. And the block numbers, the production, the usage, it tailed off last season as Doc Rivers instilled more of his work. So I'm just not interested in Brook in that top 100 zone. I just think the age, minutes reduction risk, variability of blocks, does usage and block rate and defensive scheme continue to impact Brook the way that it did when Doc Rivers turned over? All of that are just ingredients that I will just say, no, thank you. I do not want to be a part of the Brook Lopez experience at those costs. And the same goes for Punch Bob Bobby Portis, a guy who is absolutely horrendous defensively. He is a reserve who backs up Giannis and backs up Brook. But there were times last season, even when Giannis would sit, that Bobby wouldn't necessarily start. And these rankings, to me, just don't add up. ADP of 113 and 107 on Yahoo. That's for category leagues. No way. 107. That's not even your 10th starter. That's not even your last starter. That's your second last starter. No way. ESPN's ADP is 112 with a ranking of 86 for category leagues. 86? Are we talking about the same Bob Portis here? In points leagues, I'm still not doing that on Yahoo with a rank of 107. On ESPN, he's not interesting for me there at all. ADP of 112. I don't get this. I don't know what I'm looking at here. Portis is older. He's 31. I'm waiting for the screen to come up. No, he's 30. He's 6'10". He played 24 minutes a night with 23 usage. 14 and 7 seems like it's a decent enough start, but he doesn't get assists. His 3 volume is low. He doesn't get steals. He never blocks shots. 51 is solid from the field. 79 from the line is pretty good. And yeah, if Giannis misses or if Lopez misses, he will probably do more. And this team does not have any other backup center. There's nobody. It's Ondrej Pasechniks as their backup center, who, yes, is back in the NBA on a 2-way contract. That's it. That's their backup center. Investing in a backup player like Portis, who struggles with threes, assists, steals, and blocks, as one of your starters on a fantasy team, is just not anything that I can feel any level of confidence in getting behind. No way. Not interested at all. Let's talk about breakout candidates for the Bucks. And it's always a tough thing to do when we're talking about teams coached by Glenn Rivers, the man that hates anybody who is under the age of 23 or any draft pick. He will despise these men. He will hate them. So it is hard to do it. It is hard to look at these players and go, there's a breakout coming. But I saw Chris Livingston play in Summer League. Now, Livingston, as I'm going to put the numbers up in a second, did absolutely nothing last season. Doc Rivers masterclass as Chris Livingston played 4 minutes a game and averaged 1 point with 1 rebound. He's a 6'6" power forward more than a small forward. And if they look at Bobby Portis as more of a center, which is just a horrendous defensive idea, but if they do, then Livingston's going to get backup center minutes. And I would not be shocked. A little bit I would because it's Doc Rivers, but I would not be shocked if Livingston is a part of the every night rotation starting immediately. He looked really good in Summer League. Strong rebounder, shot the ball well. He looked in control, which you want a second-year player to do. Now, I'm not suggesting that we draft Livo at all, but if I'm in a 30-team league, an extended bench, best ball type scenario. Maybe not a best, maybe a best ball, but a deeper sort of format. I just think there's a little bit of something as I clutch at straws to find someone that breaks out on a Doc Rivers team. The other guy that I had there is AJ Green, and he's a guy where you go, AJ Green, huh? All right. Thought Doc didn't play rookies. Well, AJ Green was a second-year player. He's also already 25, so he doesn't really fit the mold of a guy that Doc just doesn't use out of spite. He also just doesn't look what you think he looks like. 6'4", wing, 11 minutes a game. He hit 1.2 threes. He shot 42 from the field. He shot 90 from the line. This year's Sam Merrill, Sam Hauser. Is it here? As for AJ Sam Green? Maybe. Here's a mind bender, which is not really. Is AJ Green maybe going to be better than Gary Trent? I mean, he would never get the chance to show it initially. But could he actually be a better shooter and better fit next to Lillard and next to Dame instead of seeing Gary, let me take a step in, so I'm one step inside the line, Trent? Again, not going to fully rule it out, but somehow AJ Green was able to buck tradition. Hey, there you go, wordplay. And be somewhat of a part of Doc Rivers' rotation, which again is just a modern day miracle on its own. We're going to come back and look at some rotation risks in a sec. But today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Tickets, events, we love them. We all want to go to things that are exciting, sporting events, comedy, music, theatre, concerts, whatever it is. And Game Time's always going to have those options for you. But now they've got a new thing called Game Time Picks, where they look through all of the tickets that are available on their site and they cut the fluff. They go in there and they find the best tickets and they highlight them for you, so you know that you're going to get that great deal. And of course, this is in addition to all the other things they already have, the flash deals. You have the flash deals. They get the alert sent to your phone. They say, hey, look at this great deal happening right now. Get in there. Super deals that you can see on these tickets that, like, hey, there's a ticket that's popped up for you right here and this price is amazing. You might want to jump on that. All in pricing, you can toggle that on in the app as well, so that you know the price you're paying for the ticket without waiting until you get to checkout. It's also the lowest price guarantee, because if you don't pay the lowest price on that ticket, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Okay, so time for a look at some risks in the rotation and how we're projecting these guys out. It is a relatively stable projection. I guess there could be a risk that Doc starts playing young guys. Yeah, okay. Maybe that happens. Sure, that'll definitely happen. And I said that about Chris Livingston being a breakout guy, but then I forgot that they signed Darvin Ham to be an assistant coach, and then they signed Taurean Prince, which, you know. So that's going to happen, and Prince is going to get those backup minutes. And that's another part of the reason why I'm not in love with Bob Portis at those ADPs. What if Prince just gets all of the backup power forward minutes? And Portis is only playing reserve to Lopez. Or, part of the reason, again, maybe I'm down on Lopez. What if Lopez is 28 minutes and Portis is 21? Then neither of them have got any chance at hitting that mark. The other risk, I think, is something I mentioned earlier. What if, instead of Gaz Trent as the starter, that Dr. Rivers decides he's going to go with DeLon Wright? Or Andre Jackson as a defensive player next to Lillard and next to Middleton. It's possible. That's not outrageous to suggest that Doc could do that. Maybe it is. That's not. Where are the injury concerns? Well, that's where we do get into some problems with this team, isn't it? Because there are significant ones. We already talked about Middleton, his ankles, and I've got no problem taking him at ADP and rank. Love that value. And then we talk about the big fella. We talk about Damian Lillard. As I realize I should have done injuries here. We should have done under the lens. We'll do that in a second. We are doing Damian Lillard under the lens, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. Sometimes we just make mistakes. Let's talk Giannis in this spot, because obviously for, I think, the second year out of the last 3 or out of the last 2, Giannis was not available in the playoffs after suffering a pretty significant calf injury towards the end of the regular season. Giannis has had significant knee problems over the course of his career as well, and he has routinely sat games in back-to-backs to preserve his energy. And then, wouldn't you know, everyone in the NBA cried about, these sit games, everyone's too soft. Play through everything and please die for us like you're a modern-day gladiator. And then, like so many stars, Giannis got injured towards the end of the season. Giannis, 30 years of age now, played 35 minutes with 33 usage. Part of the Budenholzer plan on Giannis was playing him 32 minutes, preserving that knee health, and keeping him ready for the end of the year. That seems to have gone out the window somewhat. Giannis still averaged 30 and 11.5 with 6.5 assists, over a steal and over a block, shooting 61 and 66 from the line. Giannis, to me, you could, if you just do not want to deal with Luka Doncic's two-game playoff week, you could take Giannis at 3 in a head-to-head draft. In a points league draft, I also get that. In a roto draft, I wouldn't take him in round 1. But that is a different situation. I will not understand a head-to-head category league person saying, I'm just not drafting Giannis in the top 5, but I'll take him at 9. I just don't want to deal with punting. If you're going to take him at 9, then take him at 5. Take him at 4. It's literally no difference. You still have to deal with a punt, yeah? You still have to deal with the bad free throws in that spot. So that idea of like, I wouldn't take top 5 because I don't want to punt, but if he falls to 8, I'll do it. If he falls to 15, a second round pick, very different scenario. Never will happen. But if you say you're willing to take him at 8, then you should be willing to do it at 4 or 5. And this idea that like everyone has to have positives in all categories and it's so hard to win with Giannis, I just think that is completely nonsense. I don't think it's hard to win with Giannis whatsoever. You have to punt threes. You don't. Like, it's very, very easy to get threes back. Like, it's not hard at all to find threes. The free throws are bad, but honestly, you can actually be competitive. You're not going to win it every week, but you can actually be competitive, but you don't need to. Just get your other categories going. So I still really like Giannis. To me, like, yeah, realistically, he's probably 4 or 5. Because I'm still like, I've got some concerns with some of Shai's numbers. But whatever. I just do not agree with this idea that, like, you can't draft Giannis because of punting. Yeah, the free throws are just a killer. Oh, well. It'll be okay. You can actually do it. If you don't want to, totally your choice. Totally your choice. But I think there's an idea that it becomes impossible to win by drafting Giannis in round 1, which, again, is just blatantly not true. Obviously, in points leagues as well, it's really, really, really not true. The other injury situation, it just gives us something to be worried about, and I talked about his potential to maybe start on this team. That's Delon Wright. Because Wright has had numerous knee injuries over the course of his career. He ended up starting for Washington, or started the season for Washington, ended up in Miami. He's 32 now. He only played 16 minutes a night, 4 points, 2.5 assists with 1.1 steals. But what he is a guy that gets some threes, he gets some assists, he gets some steals. He's an elite streaming guy if he gets 26, 27 minutes. But the age has caught up. There's been multiple knee injuries, and that is a concern for where he can go and what we can get brought to us by what Delon brings. So that's, I guess, some level of injury concern. I guess you could throw that Damian Lillard had some ankle and calf issues as an older man. True. Brook Lopez with the back injury 2 years ago. Guess we have some level of worry there, but it's nothing that's really pressing at the moment. But let's put Dame Lillard under the lens, because it was a weird situation last season. And honestly, with Dame last year, I'm trying to work out how to best say this. I got the projection on him wrong. I still had him at, like, I say 11 or 12 coming over in the trade. I thought that, yes, he would lose some shots, but as a general rule, the top 2 guys stay relatively stable. The third guy loses out. Well, the third guy did lose out. That was Khris Middleton. But Giannis stayed pretty stable, but Dame also lost out. And I didn't really see that coming. And in the second half of the season, Dame got way worse. Now, it turns out there were other factors that we found out after the season, that Dame did absolutely no work at all through the offseason. Didn't want to get injured before he was traded. Okay? Didn't do any preseason work. Then there was the off-court stuff, which obviously disrupted him. He was going back and forth between Milwaukee and Portland with his family and his kids and all this sort of stuff. And that impacted him as well. So, this season, Dame is hopefully more settled in Milwaukee. Hopefully, he's done work in the off-season and preseason. And hopefully, some of the family stuff's a little bit clearer and easier for him. There is a shot, an outside shot, that Dame is just washed. I do not think this is the case. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, like, it's not possible. Because it is. He's 32, 33. Lillard's numbers were still really good. His shooting quality is still really good. But he did suffer a big true shooting drop. He didn't take as many threes. He's continually going to be terrible defensively. We know this. But we also saw like some of his passing numbers and his creation numbers and all that sort of stuff fall away. Playing for this new team and trying to figure out where he was. New team, new teammates, 2 new coaches, off-court trouble, fitness not where it needed to be. Yet still Lillard was a pretty solid enough back-end second-round player. But he's a 6'2", 34-year-old guard. He had 29 usage with 35 minutes. So 29 usage is still really high. He averaged 24 points with 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and a steal, shot 42 and 92. There's not much that's that different there. What is different is the usage drops slightly. The field goal percentage drops slightly as well. And if the usage goes back up, it might not. But if the field goal percentage goes back up, then we get more scoring. Maybe we get to 3.3 triples and 26 points. He's fine to take a look at towards that back end of a draft. Back end of round 2 in a draft. But I'm also not going to be completely sold on it. And here's something that I want to show you, as I do all the time. That graph on the right is Darko's rim field goal attempts progression and where he's at. Towards the end of the 22-23 season, he was really flying up and he was taking a lot of shots at the rim. And then look at last season. He just stopped driving. Is that a Griffin thing? Is it a Rivers thing? Is it a Dame thing on a new team? Is it a Giannis thing? Is it an age thing? The fact that I can rattle off many different reasons leaves me worried that it's not just a single season blip and that obvious trend line is obviously trending down at his age is concerning. And getting shots at the rim are the single most efficient shots, which if we're talking about a guy whose field goal percentage suffered a dip, I'd want him to take more efficient shots. The headshot plot there for Basketball Index shows 2 different things. On the x-axis, offensive involvement rate, so how much are you involved in the offense, relatively self-explanatory. And on the left-hand side, on the y-axis, we're talking cuts per 75. So what are you doing off-ball? And I've plotted 2023 and 2024 there. So as you can see, Damian Lillard's offensive involvement rate dropped, but not that much. He was about the 98th percentile, went down to about the 97th percentile. So it dropped. Some other names that are on here, there is Jordan Poole on this list, Devin Booker on this list, Khris Middleton on this list, and Giannis on this list. The guys on the Bucks that suffered the biggest drops in offensive involvement rate were Giannis, going down from 85 to 80, and Middleton from about 86 to about 82. Much sharper drops in involvement on offense than Lillard. So it's not just that like he wasn't getting the ball. He was sort of just doing things differently. And remember what usage is. It's about shots and turnovers. It's not about how much you have the ball. So it was just a different style of game for Dame. And then if we talk about cuts per 75, so Giannis didn't have the ball as much. He started cutting to the rim more. So his cut numbers, they didn't go up huge amounts, but they went up enough. Like that graph, those, we're talking the markers there between 70 and 50. So he's gone from like 72 to like 85 in terms of percentile in cuts. So Giannis has started working more off ball. Middleton actually cut less. Dame also saw his cut rate drop. Despite his offensive involvement rate dropping, he just wasn't as active at cutting to the basket. And we talked about that, ties back into looking at that graph and rim field goal attempts. He wasn't moving as much. Is that like an unfamiliarity with his teammates in the offense? Maybe. I put Poole and Booker on here just because they are players who have similar sort of stat shapes to Lillard, and we can see sort of where they sit. But Lillard comfortably clears both players in offensive involvement rate in each of the last 2 seasons. But you saw that the cut rate from Dame went well below where Booker was and well below where Jordan Poole was. So that part of his game just sort of wasn't there anymore. If we have a look at that fantasy translation similarity, the guy, interesting, the number 1 similarity was Anthony Simons. And then it was Jordan Poole, Devin Booker, and Jalen Brunson. And that makes sense. He's scoring, you hit threes, low defensive stats, great free throws. Not high assists, but there's sort of same shape players. So I've sort of gone back and forth on Lillard. I thought maybe we go up to number 15 with him in a draft and that might work out okay. Now I'm like, oh, but maybe he's just washed and the system doesn't work for him as well and he doesn't get to the rim as much and that means that efficiency stays low. If I'm going to bank one way on it or the other, I think that we get better production from Dame this season. I think we get some sort of a bounce back with more familiarity with teammates, coach, city, and hopefully personal problems, maybe a little bit in the rearview mirror would be the hope. But that's obviously very, very far from that being a guarantee. we just don't know exactly how that's going to work, or how these people who are humans respond in those scenarios, especially when they're 36 years of age. Let's take a look at the schedule for the Milwaukee Bucks. We've talked about this in quite a few shows, but they have the absolute most quality games for the entire league. 59 is an insane number. What is a quality game? This is a great time for me to tell you again what it is. It is a game that is played on a day in the NBA, and I use the cutoff of 9. So if you play on a day in the NBA where there are 9 games or fewer, which is usually the number of games where you do not have to make a start-sit decision in your fantasy league, where you'll just be able to put all of your active players into a starting spot. 59 of their 82 games are on those low-volume days. For contrast, the lowest team is at 42. It's a big difference. The Bucks clear everybody. Meaning that if you have Bucks players on your teams, that they will not be clogging up your active roster on the busy days anywhere near as much as any other team. The problem, I guess, on the counterweight to that is that they have 16 back-to-backs. That is the most in the league, equal most. So if they do look to preserve some of Giannis, or we're keeping Middleton out of the lineup plenty of times, then there's 16 of those back-to-backs. Or Brook Lopez is old ass, or Damian Lillard gets hurt. There's numerous reasons why that is a concern. They have 14 maximum game weeks, which sort of slots into the middle, and their fantasy playoff schedule is just sort of okay. If you end on March 23rd, which is my selected playoff date end, they go 4-4-3. If it's March 30th, it's 4-3-4. If it's Yahoo default, it's 3-4-3. And if it's ESPN default, it is 3-4-3-4. Let's take a look at one of the funniest sections of this show, because we're talking about young players and we're talking about a Glenn Rivers coach team. We're talking about the youth invasion, the guys who might combine for 100 total minutes this season. Who is under 23 on this squad, and what is their dynasty appeal? Well, immediately if you play under Doc Rivers, you lose dynasty appeal. If you lose dynasty value playing on a team that is as old as this is and that are going for it as much as they are. There are 5 guys that I want to talk about. Andre Jackson Jr., second round pick last season. If it wasn't for Ryan Dunn, he might have the worst offensive game in the NBA. Defensively, fine, but I just don't think the offense cuts it. Top 350 is my dynasty projection on him. Tyler Smith is an interesting player because I loved Tyler Smith in the draft process. I thought that he was being significantly underrated. Yeah, he does have, and let me again rephrase this. This is a very, very bad draft class. I have continued to hear things from people who talk to scouts and talk to agents and talk to teams, and it's like, especially about the Bucks with some of their draft stuff, they went, yeah, like the Bucks know that this is a bad class, so they're just like, whatever. We're not actually investing much thought into this draft class, which is not great. But Tyler Smith, I thought, had a shot to be a top 10 player, even top 5 in this draft, because I just think it's that bad. And what he does is shoot the ball really well. He's big. I think he can rebound really well. I think he can block shots really well. The defense is a problem, but a shooting power forward archetype who can play both ways, I do actually really like that style of player in today's NBA. Now, him falling to 33 was pretty crazy to me, Tyler Smith. And the fact that he fell that far, the fact that he plays for Milwaukee with Bobby Portis, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Doc Rivers then coaching, means I had to downgrade his dynasty value. He's a 6'11 power forward. You can see his G League numbers there. He had 25 usage. He shot 14 and 5 with 1.5 threes and 0.9 blocks with 48 and 73. He was the rare G League Ignite player who transitioned to the full NBA line and shot well. Most of them shoot terribly and improve in the NBA. He was already at like 36% from 3 last season in the Ignite, which makes me think he could be an absolute knockdown bomber. I was impressed with the way he moved in Summer League, but there's just no opportunity for this season and maybe not next season. He's also still really young. So I had Tyler Smith as a top 175 dynasty guy. It's just going to be a long, long wait. The guy that they did absolutely out of nowhere, take in the first round of the draft, AJ Johnson, I have as a top 200 guy. Now, that is boosted up by the fact that he's incredibly young and the fact that he gets a boost by being a first-round pick, but this man is not going to play. And this is where I heard some information about them taking Johnson, which shocked basically everybody. And the Bucks were like, we hate all these prospects as like long-term guys. Let's see, yeah? He's got athleticism, let's see. He's a 6'5" wing who plays point guard also. He played 8 minutes a night in the NBL. He averaged 3 points and shot 36% from the field, 54 from the line. He was terrible in the NBL, like terrible. Had some okay moments in some league, but he is just not going to play. I had him as a pick in the 50s in the real draft. He obviously went way higher. I think inexplicably. Maybe they found something. I don't know. But I am just not in on AJ Johnson. Ryan Rollins is another younger player. Now that he's not arrested for shoplifting, he's back on the Bucks instead of being on the Wizards, and he was on the Warriors initially. Really strong, not two-way, he's on a two-way contract, but really strong pick-and-roll player coming out of college. There are some flashes for him to be a fantasy guy because of some shooting and some assist numbers. I've got him at top 250 in Dynasty, but obviously a lot of hiccups in the way. And then Chris Livingston, who maybe there's a shot. I've been impressed with what I saw at times, and especially in the G League and at Summer League. I've got him as a top 225 guy at this stage. Let's take a look at risk-reward options. Who are the... And you know that I did like stuff on best case, worst case scenario. And the guy that comes up as the best case, worst case player who is Khris Middleton. Not surprising based on the way his stats are accumulated. This doesn't even take into consideration minutes variability. But I had a 77 rank spot difference between best and worst case for categories and about 5.6 for points. For reference, if you've got a 7-point fantasy point best case, worst case difference, that's probably the high end. 5.6 is in the middle. And this team was relatively stable in terms of their projections. But Middleton shakes out as probably the one that we have a level of worry about, along with all the other stuff and the injuries that I didn't even mention here, which I just did. So I did mention them. Last thing are the old bastards. The over-the-hill players decline phase. Now, if you hit the age of 29, things will start to go downhill. The rate at which they do, we know, could vary. So let's talk about how many guys are on this team that do that, because there are a lot of them. Giannis. Now, Giannis isn't likely to drop off a cliff, but there's going to be small declines, and we've already seen that in some of his defensive numbers. Damian Lillard is 34. We saw the decline start to hit last season. Is it age-related or other factors? I'll lean other factors for now, but we're not expecting prime Dame. Khris Middleton is over 29. We already know the body's giving up. Brook Lopez is 37. He's very much over 29, and we saw the decline as well last season. Bobby Portis, he's 30. He's not young. Delon Wright, he's 32. I could actually keep going because Taurean Prince fits this mold as well. They are a very old team. And some of these guys that I think are overvalued, like Lopez and Portis, are old. Some of the guy I think is undervalued, like Khris Middleton, is old. Giannis, a top 5 pick, he's older. He's not old, but he's older. Lillard, a second-round guy, he's old. They are very old. This is a weird team. A weird coach, a weird situation, a weird roster, an old roster. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with this Bucks team. Or, if everything goes right, like, they have enough very, very good players to actually do something. There are a couple of guys that I haven't really touched on in this show. I'll quickly talk about Pat Connaughton, who I thought was pretty bad last season. Although what I was impressed was, for some godforsaken reason, Doc played him as a point guard, and he was okay. But 22 minutes, 2 assists, 44% shooting. I think they would love for him to be out of the rotation and someone like Livingston step up into that role, or AJ Green get larger role. And Connaughton has obviously, I would hope obviously, no real fantasy appeal at all. Andre Jackson barely played as a rookie last season. I'm not going to even bother about him, but maybe it is time for me to talk about the guy who is likely to start at shooting guard, and that is Gaz Trent. A player that frustrates me no end, a player that's individual fantasy rankings with straight 9-cat can get skewed by high steals and low turnovers, which makes him seem significantly better than he is. He was not a rosterable player last season. He played 28 minutes with 20 usage, averaged 14 points and 2.5 threes. He gets no rebounds. He gets no assists. His steals dropped to 1.1, and he shot 43 and 77. If you draft Gary Trent, you are drafting him for threes and maybe hoping to get steals back at volume. But I also just don't think he's... Oh, as I hit the mic, I just don't think he's very good. So when he goes for a minimum contract, people go, man, the CBA is broken. Kill CJ McCollum. They ruined everything. I go, okay, he's not that good, Gary Trent. He had the opportunity to take a contract extension, turned it down. He is not that good. Is he better than a minimum contract player? Probably. But he also chose to come here and want this opportunity, and maybe he is better. But he does infuriating things defensively and offensively, and he's just a player that I just think my opinion on him is different to the vast majority of others, and therefore, like, I'm always going to be down on him. But late round pick, you want some points? No, not really. You want some threes. You maybe get some steals, but you maybe not. That might have been a Nick Nurse inflation thing. Then Trent's an option. Or he could lose his spot to DeLon Wright or AJ Green. I don't think there's anyone else to majorly dig into. Oh, no, actually, you know what? Let's talk about the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince, who started a multitude of games for Darvin Ham and the Lakers last season and was really horrible from a fantasy point of view. Under 9 points per game, under 3 rebounds as a power forward. 44% shooting, 74 from the line. He played 27 minutes a night and 14 usage, and he replaces Jay Crowder in this rotation. And he is better than Jay Crowder, who is absolutely washed, and now he's on the Kings, apparently. Not that I think that contract's actually... Oh, no. Did he work? I think he worked out for the Kings. I don't think he signed. Prince is not a fantasy option, even if he starts when Giannis goes down, which I do think is what will happen. I think Prince will start, not Portis. We do not have any interest in Taurean Prince in that scenario. Because I spent the time creating an Andre Jackson graphic, I might as well put it up just so you can laugh at the numbers that he put up. Oh, the other guy I haven't mentioned is Marjon Beauchamp, and that's because I think he might be actually done in the NBA. He has not taken any steps forward whatsoever, and I think he might be just bad. As for Andre Jackson, he's 23 now, so he's moving into the zone where Doc Rivers doesn't automatically hate him. 10 minutes, 10 usage last season, 2 points a game. What he was in college was a point guard who got some solid assists but couldn't do anything offensively, but was a big steals and blocks guy. And that obviously didn't translate across into the NBA. At this point, the steal rate's low, the block rate is infinitesimally small. And the lack of offense, the lack of being able to score is going to severely limit any impact he can have, and I'm sort of out on him. That's it. That is the Milwaukee Bucks with an extra talk about ESPN and Kawhi Leonard at the start of the show. Get your Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl invites in, or get your applications in, get your invites accepted. And we are rolling towards those drafts starting next week. So, recap. Giannis in points leagues is better than category leagues, but do not get twisted that you can't take him in the top 5 in category leagues, because you can. Roto, probably not, but head-to-head, absolutely. Lillard, you want to go round 2, I get it. You were scared in round 2, I also get it. Maybe you look at round 3. There are indicators either way. Middleton, almost impossible to go wrong picking him outside the top 100. Lopez, just way too high, especially in asinine 38th ranking on ESPN. Gary Trent, not sold. Think there's very limited upside with him. Not interested in Bobby Portis. If I'm going to take a backup, I'll take Andre Drummond. Different player, obviously, different positions, but if I'm taking a handcuff, that's who I'm taking. And then you go to DeLon Wright and Taurean Prince and Connaughton and Green and Jackson and Beauchamp and Smith, and old mate Stanley Amude is here. And they're going to have no impact whatsoever. Guys, we are done here. Hit the subscribe, hit the thumbs up, leave your comment, and yeah, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.